It started with an envelope, just a plain white envelope, unmarked, sitting in the center of our old oak kitchen table. I don't know how long it had been there before I noticed it, maybe hours, maybe days, but something about it felt heavy, like it didn't belong in the bright, quiet rhythm of that kitchen. I hadn't been home in 5 years, not since Mom passed, and I only came back because my job was falling apart, and I needed a place to breathe. The house hadn't changed much. The wallpaper was still a faded peach. The floor still creaked in the same places. The air smelled like old tea and lemon. And then there was Darren, my stepfather, a man who had been both a shadow and a savior in my teenage years. Black, broad-shouldered, quiet as winter mornings. He had been with my mother since I was 10, raised me like I was his own. But after her death, something shifted between us. A silence, a space neither of us dared to cross. When I walked in that first evening, suitcase in hand, Darren just nodded from the hallway. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied. That was it. 5 years in 2 words. We moved around each other like ghosts for the first 2 days. I took the guest room. He kept to his study. We shared the same roof, but barely shared breath. And still, the envelope remained on the kitchen table, untouched. It was on the 3rd morning that Darren broke the pattern. "You're still a coffee person, right?" he asked, holding the pot in one hand, 2 mugs in the other. "Yeah," I said, trying not to sound surprised. He poured, passed a cup to me, and sat at the far end of the table. Silence stretched again, but not quite as painfully this time. "You looked tired when you came in. You okay?" he asked. I paused. "Just life stuff, job stuff. Needed a reset." He nodded, sipped. "This place can do that. Reset you." I wanted to ask how he had been, what his days looked like now, whether he still played chess on Sundays like he used to, but instead I just stared at the envelope. "That yours?" I asked finally. He followed my gaze. "Number, it's yours." My stomach tightened. I reached for it slowly like it might burn. Inside was a letter, handwritten, in Mom's slanted script. My hands shook as I unfolded it. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. And if Darren gave this to you, it means he still believes in things I wasn't brave enough to say out loud." I couldn't breathe. I loved him, more than I ever thought I could love anyone again, but I wasn't faithful to him. Not once. Not really. My vision blurred. I kept secrets from him, and I kept secrets from you. I thought I was protecting everyone, but maybe I was just protecting myself. I hope, one day, you'll forgive me, and I hope you see Darren for what he is. A man who loved us both more than we ever deserved. There was more. Words about pain, about guilt, about nights she spent crying in the car, but I couldn't read anymore. I folded the letter back up with shaking hands and stared at Darren. He was still sitting there, still sipping his coffee. "You knew?" I whispered. "Yeah," he said. "I knew. And you stayed." He nodded. "Because she was more than her mistakes. And you were just a kid. You needed someone." I looked away, blinking furiously. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have helped you love her more? Or hate her less?" I didn't have an answer. We sat there for a long time, the letter between us like a third presence. The kitchen clock ticked. A bird chirped outside the window. Darren poured me a second cup of coffee without asking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the guest room, thinking about all the times Mom came home late, smelling of unfamiliar cologne, the way Darren would be sitting on the porch, waiting, never yelling. The next morning I found him in the backyard, pulling weeds from the garden. "Need a hand?" I asked. He looked up, surprised. "Sure." I knelt beside him, hands in the dirt, feeling something shift, a weight I hadn't known I was carrying, slowly lifting. We didn't talk much, but when I stood up I looked at him and said, "You didn't have to raise me." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." For the first time in years I hugged him. He didn't hug back immediately, but when he did, it was strong, solid, like coming home to something I didn't know I missed. We spent the next 2 days in a kind of quiet rhythm. It wasn't easy. Nothing dramatic happened. No great revelations. But something unspoken had passed between us, and that was enough. We fixed the porch light, cleaned out Mom's old books, shared a dinner of spaghetti and garlic bread, like the old days. Every now and then, I caught Darren looking at me with something like curiosity, or maybe relief, like he was glad I hadn't run, like maybe he had feared I would. "She wrote more than one letter," he said the night before I was set to leave. We were sitting on the back porch. The air was cool, soft with crickets. "She wrote one to me, too, right before the chemo got bad. Said she was sorry, that she wished she had been braver. I didn't ask what the letter said. He didn't offer. I was angry for a long time," he added. "But in the end, I think, I just missed her more than I hated what she did." There was a long silence. "I always wondered," I said finally, "if you resented me, for being hers, for not being yours." He turned to me slowly. "Never," I believed him, maybe for the first time. The next morning I packed my things. The house looked different in the early light. Warmer. Not perfect, but lived in. Honest. As I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, Darren came out holding something wrapped in an old shirt. "She wanted you to have this," he said. It was a photo. Me, Mom, and Darren at the beach. I must have been 12. We were all laughing. Sand stuck to our legs, sunburn on our cheeks. "She kept it in her drawer," he said. Said it was her favorite. I clutched it like it might disappear. "Thanks," I said. He nodded. "Don't wait 5 years next time." "I won't." As I pulled out of the driveway, I looked back once. He was still there, standing in the doorway, not waving, just watching. Not everyone who stays loves perfectly. Some stay despite being broken, despite betrayal, despite truth. But sometimes that kind of staying means more than anything else, and I would never forget it.